I think there were not many people who understood just how broad his interests were and how supportive he was of an astonishingly wide range of organisations.
The document required only one final signature. Once Charles placed his name beneath the authorization, Camilla would gain access to one of the monarchy's most guarded collections, the official jewels worn by Queen Elizabeth II during the defining moments of her reign. But before the king's pen could touch the paper, Anne stepped forward, closed the folder with one deliberate movement, and told her brother that some royal boundaries could not be erased by command. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles stared at his sister's hand as silence tightened across the morning meeting at Windsor Castle. The authorization and official written order granting permission covered ceremonial necklaces, historic brooches, state bracelets, and pieces tied directly to their mother's 7-decade reign. These were not valuable ornaments. They carried memories of diplomatic tours, constitutional ceremonies, national mourning, and the public image Queen Elizabeth had built through duty. Anne kept the folder shut. In front of the keeper of the jewels, the official responsible for safeguarding and recording royal pieces, and 2 household officers, she had interrupted the monarch himself. Charles demanded that she move her hand. His voice remained controlled, but anger sharpened every word. He believed Camilla needed access to serve beside him, without appearing lesser, temporary, or dependent on another woman's approval. Anne refused. Grief entered her voice as she told him their mother's collection could not become a private wardrobe automatically handed to the king's wife. Camilla stood near the fireplace saying nothing, yet her expression hardened. She understood the insult beneath the restriction. To her, the closed folder suggested that becoming queen had still not opened every royal door. Then Anne revealed the hidden danger. Several jewels listed in the order had been preserved under private instructions for future sovereigns, national ceremonies, and specific women within the family. She placed a sealed inventory beside the authorization. The document carried Queen Elizabeth's handwritten annotations, notes identifying where certain pieces should go and when they could be worn. Charles set down his fountain pen so forcefully that it rolled across the table. He asked how Anne had obtained the inventory. She would not answer. Not yet. Instead, she warned that the argument had started months before, when one particular jewel appeared where their mother had expressly said it never should. That single claim changed the room. Camilla looked toward Charles, while he watched Anne with disbelief turning into suspicion. To understand why she was prepared to defy the king inside his own castle, the fears surrounding that table, and what each believed they were about to lose, had to be exposed. For Charles, the order was an attempt to settle Camilla's position once and for all. For Anne, it threatened to dissolve the final boundary protecting their mother's legacy. And for Camilla, the closed folder became something far more painful than an administrative refusal. It suggested that even after becoming queen, she could still be treated as an outsider welcomed beside the throne, yet stopped at the door of its most powerful symbols. Charles had spent years fighting for acceptance, but becoming king had not ended that battle. He believed the queen's ceremonial role had to be supported by visible signs of authority, especially during state occasions when she was expected to represent continuity beside him. Historic jewels were not merely decoration in those moments. They signaled rank, stability, and belonging. Every restriction placed upon Camilla felt, to him, like a public reminder that parts of the royal household still viewed her presence as conditional. Anne carried a different burden. She had never sought the throne, nor had she attempted to dominate the family after Queen Elizabeth's death. Yet she had become the most disciplined guardian of the late monarch's intentions. Crown property meant objects held for royal duty, while personal inheritance referred to possessions passed privately through the family. Anne believed those lines mattered, because some pieces carried instructions that were deeply personal, written not by an institution, but by their mother. Charles felt betrayed. His sister was not merely questioning paperwork. She was challenging a decision he saw as both marital loyalty and royal necessity. Her resistance humiliated Camilla and weakened his authority at a moment when the household was still adjusting to a new reign. Anne, however, believed his desire to protect his wife had clouded his judgment. She did not oppose the queen's title. She feared he was removing every limit that caused discomfort, even when those limits preserved Queen Elizabeth's final wishes. Camilla sat alone after the meeting was suspended. She removed one glove finger by finger, holding her anger beneath a rigid silence. When Charles entered, she asked whether Anne would always possess the power to make her feel illegitimate. He assured her that access to the collection remained under his authority, but his confidence weakened when an aide confirmed that the sealed inventory carried the late Queen's private cipher, a personal authentication mark that could give the document greater weight than the general household record. Anne spoke privately with the keeper of the jewels soon afterward. She made one point clear: she was not trying to deny Camilla every piece. Her concern involved a protected group separated during Queen Elizabeth's final years, including items Charles might not know had been restricted. Charles caught Anne in a side corridor and asked whether this was truly about jewelry. She stopped, met his eyes, and said it was about whether their mother's wishes still mattered when they became inconvenient. Then she named the moment that had destroyed her trust. A private Windsor ceremony, when Camilla requested a jewel already reserved for someone else. That ceremony lasted less than an hour, but what happened inside it became the point of no return and the reason Anne came prepared to stop a king. The fracture began at a small Windsor reception, held behind closed doors, long before the authorization reached Charles's desk. There were no crowds, no cameras, and no public announcement. Yet one request changed the atmosphere instantly. Camilla asked to wear the late Queen's diamond and sapphire Commonwealth brooch at an approaching state banquet. The room fell silent because Anne remembered exactly what her mother had said about that piece and whom she had intended to wear it next. 3 months earlier, Camilla had joined a private jewelry consultation to prepare for a major diplomatic banquet. The keeper of the jewels, the official responsible for safeguarding and recording royal pieces, presented several necklaces, bracelets, and brooches already approved for state use. Anne attended for one reason: to confirm which objects had been reserved under Queen Elizabeth's final instructions. The Commonwealth brooch carried a weight beyond its diamonds and sapphires. Queen Elizabeth had worn it during important diplomatic engagements, turning it into a symbol of service, trust, and continuity across nations. To Camilla, it offered exactly the message she wanted the banquet to send. She pointed to it and asked that it be prepared. The keeper hesitated. Charles noticed immediately. He said the Queen should not need permission to wear a jewel associated with the crown. His words were calm, but the meaning was unmistakable. Camilla was his wife, his consort, and the woman serving beside him. He would not allow her to be treated as a temporary guest within her own reign. Anne intervened before the case could be opened. She explained that their mother had personally reserved the brooch for Catherine's first solo Commonwealth address as Princess of Wales, the title held by the wife of the heir to the throne. Camilla's expression tightened. Once again, the future queen appeared to be receiving a symbol the reigning one could not touch. Charles dismissed the reservation as an informal intention, rather than a binding command. Anne heard something far more dangerous. If one written wish could be ignored because it caused discomfort, then every safeguard their mother had left could be removed in exactly the same way. The keeper finally revealed that a handwritten card remained inside the brooch's case. Queen Elizabeth had named both the occasion and the intended wearer. The instruction was not vague, it was precise. Camilla did not wear the brooch that evening. Yet days later, her private secretary requested a complete list of every official jewel that might be made available to the reigning queen. That request eventually became the unrestricted authorization Anne later found on Charles's desk. After the consultation, Anne remained alone with the open case. She read her mother's card twice, closed the lid, and told the keeper that nothing bearing the late queen's instructions was to be moved without her knowledge. When she later saw the same brooch listed beside every other protected piece, Anne understood the truth. This was no longer about one banquet. It was an attempt to remove the restrictions entirely. By the time Charles reopened the folder at Windsor, Anne was no longer trying to prevent a misunderstanding. She was preparing for a confrontation neither sibling could escape. When the room was cleared of aides, the restraint disappeared. Charles stood behind the desk with the unsigned authorization before him. Anne remained opposite, refusing the chair offered to her. Camilla stayed near the doorway, unwilling to leave while her future was being discussed. Then the king accused his sister of using their mother's memory as a weapon. Anne answered without raising her voice, "And you are protecting your wife by erasing what mother chose." Charles ordered the last household official to close the door. Without witnesses, the disagreement stopped being a question of procedure and became a family reckoning. He argued that a reigning queen could not be expected to seek Anne's approval, Whenever a state occasion required historic jewelry, Camilla stood beside him, and he insisted that every restriction made her position appear conditional, weak, and somehow less legitimate. Anne did not retreat. She reminded him that Camilla already had access to a wide ceremonial collection. Crown pieces, meaning jewels held for official royal duty rather than private ownership, were available for banquets, receptions, and national events. The blocked authorization went much further. It included objects carrying Queen Elizabeth's written instructions for Catherine, Charlotte, future sovereigns, and ceremonies that had not yet taken place. Camilla finally broke her silence. She asked whether Anne intended to guard every memory so fiercely that no woman could serve beside Charles without being accused of replacing their mother. Her voice carried years of frustration. She had reached the throne, yet she still felt judged by a past she could never change. Anne stepped closer. She told the Queen that service was not the issue. Possession was. Wearing an approved jewel for duty was one thing. Removing every limit around objects meant for others was something entirely different. Then Anne opened the sealed inventory. 3 categories appeared inside it. Jewels approved for the reigning queen, pieces requiring ceremonial authorization, and a protected collection reserved for named recipients or historical preservation. Charles read the pages twice. The Royal Collection Council, the body responsible for overseeing the monarchy's historic possessions, had never been asked to erase those divisions. The authorization before him did exactly that. Charles turned toward Camilla and asked whether she knew the order placed the entire collection under one broad rule. She hesitated. No denial came. Her silence wounded him more deeply than anger could have, while Anne understood that someone within the Queen's household had expanded the request beyond its original purpose. Charles lifted the authorization. He did not tear it. Instead, he folded it once through the royal seal, making it unusable until a formal review could take place. Anne had stopped the signature, but she felt no victory. Charles announced that the Royal Collection Council would decide whether their mother's handwritten restrictions carried any authority at all. The argument had exposed the family. The next battle would be colder, fought through inventories, precedents, sealed instructions, and the people controlling access to the crown's memory. The jewels were locked behind steel, glass, coded records, and centuries of protocol. Yet the greatest protection was never the vault itself. It was classification. One line in an inventory could determine whether an object belonged to the sovereign, the crown, the royal collection, or a named heir. As officials gathered to review Anne's documents, Charles discovered an uncomfortable truth. Being king did not make every royal possession his to distribute without consequence. Charles entered the review expecting authority to settle the matter. Instead, he found a system built to restrain even royal power. The keeper of the jewels controlled physical custody. The Royal Collection Council decided how each object was classified, and the sovereign could approve ceremonial use only within those limits. The council was the group responsible for deciding whether historic pieces were official assets, personal possessions, or protected items intended for particular people and occasions. Sir Malcolm Harcourt sat opposite the king with trembling hands. He had served Queen Elizabeth for decades, and every answer now carried danger. Charles asked whether Anne had exaggerated the importance of the handwritten notes. The elderly keeper looked directly at him and said the late monarch had reviewed the protected list herself during her final summer at Balmoral. She had not spoken casually. She had recorded her intentions. Camilla listened as officials discussed her access through codes, categories, and sealed records. Each technical phrase made her feel more isolated. Later, she told her private secretary that everyone spoke as though she were attempting theft, when she believed she was asking for the symbols required to perform the role the monarchy had given her. Her frustration was real, but so was the damage already unfolding. Then the council found the alteration. Sir Malcolm's original authorization covered 12 approved ceremonial pieces. The final document placed the entire official collection at Camilla's discretion. Someone had removed the boundaries Anne was fighting to preserve. Charles summoned the senior household official responsible. The man admitted changing the language because he believed the king wanted every visible distinction between Queen Elizabeth and the current queen erased. He said he had acted to protect Her Majesty from repeated humiliation. Camilla closed her eyes. An attempt to strengthen her position had made her appear grasping, while Charles realized his loyalty had been used to justify a far greater demand than he had intended. Anne showed no satisfaction. She asked only that the protected categories be formally recognized before another jewel was requested, moved, or publicly worn. Charles agreed to suspend the authorization, but he refused to accept her full proposal until he had spoken privately with his wife. The paperwork had exposed how the order was expanded, but no council could answer the question now threatening their marriage. How much access did Camilla truly believe becoming queen entitled her to claim? The following morning, Camilla arrived for a scheduled jewelry fitting and found the inner vault sealed. No accusation had been posted. No public statement had been released. There was only a new instruction requiring written approval before any protected case could be opened. The queen stood before the locked gate as the keeper apologized. For the first time since the confrontation, the consequences became physical. Anne had not merely stopped a signature. She had placed a boundary where Camilla could see it. Camilla had expected to choose a necklace for an approaching diplomatic reception. Instead, she found the collection divided. 12 ceremonial pieces remained available, but everything Queen Elizabeth had placed in the protected group was frozen. That group contained jewels reserved for named recipients, future ceremonies, and moments the late monarch believed should carry her intentions forward. The change moved quietly through the household. Staff were ordered to keep state fittings separate from the restricted archive, forcing every aide to speak carefully around Anne and the Queen. No one wanted to suggest guilt. No one dared call the restriction temporary with confidence. Camilla gripped the handle of her handbag and asked whether Anne had personally ordered the gate closed. Sir Malcolm Harcourt answered with visible discomfort. Charles had approved the freeze after learning that the authorization had been altered. Her anger shifted at once. The decision had come from her husband, yet he had allowed her to discover it while standing before a locked vault. Camilla confronted Charles in her private rooms. She told him that he had allowed his sister to reduce her queenship to a list of permissions. He replied that the altered document had left him no responsible choice. But reason could not soften humiliation. She had spent years reaching the position beside him. Now a steel gate had reminded her that acceptance could still be withdrawn piece by piece. Charles then revealed how extensive the protected list was. The Commonwealth brooch was only one of 6 objects connected directly to Catherine. 2 other pieces had been marked for Charlotte when she reached adulthood, while several remained reserved for national anniversaries and future coronation traditions. Camilla's certainty began to weaken when she learned that Anne had proposed a compromise. The Queen could receive access to a larger ceremonial collection, provided the late monarch's written designations remained untouched. It was not the total exclusion she had feared. After Charles left, Camilla opened the empty jewelry case prepared for the reception. She stared at the untouched velvet and quietly admitted that no title could force a family to accept the woman wearing it. That evening, she selected a modest approved necklace. Guests noticed the restraint, while palace aides understood that the conflict had changed royal presentation itself. Later that night, Charles received a handwritten note from Anne requesting a meeting without advisors, inventories, or household officials. The locked vault had made the division real. The decisive shift would come in private, when brother and sister finally spoke as the children of the same mother. Anne did not bring the inventory to their private meeting. She brought a small envelope, softened at the edges from being handled too many times. Charles recognized his mother's handwriting before his sister placed it between them. For several seconds, neither spoke. The confrontation, the altered authorization, and Camilla's humiliation suddenly seemed secondary. Inside the envelope was not a legal command, but a personal appeal Queen Elizabeth had written to the 2 children she trusted with different parts of her legacy. Charles and Anne met alone in their mother's former sitting room at Balmoral. No secretaries waited outside, no council papers rested between them, and no official record would preserve what was said. Without the protection of titles and procedure, the king and the Princess Royal were forced to speak as brother and sister. Anne explained that Queen Elizabeth had given her the envelope during her final summer. She had been told to open it only if a dispute arose over the difference between serving the crown and possessing its symbols. The crown meant the monarchy as an enduring institution, while its symbols were the objects temporarily entrusted to each generation. Charles felt the old wound immediately. He asked why their mother had trusted Anne with the letter rather than him. Did she believe her son would become king and then ignore everything she had tried to protect? Anne answered carefully. Their mother had feared neither Charles nor Camilla as individuals. She had feared grief, guilt, and the desperate need to prove acceptance. Those emotions, she warned, could push a new reign into making permanent decisions for deeply personal reasons. Charles opened the letter and read in silence. Halfway through, he removed his glasses and pressed his fingers against his eyes. Anne turned away, giving him the privacy to grieve without being watched. The letter asked Charles to treat Camilla with dignity and ensure she possessed everything required for royal service. Yet it also asked Anne to protect specific objects intended to carry family memory forward to Catherine, Charlotte, and generations still too young to understand what had been left for them. Queen Elizabeth had anticipated the conflict. Fairness, she wrote, would require limits on both sides. Camilla must never be denied the symbols appropriate to her role, but the new reign must not erase every promise made by the old one. Charles finally admitted why he had supported broad access. He could not bear seeing his wife treated as temporary. Anne admitted that her fierce protection had made Camilla feel punished simply for surviving their mother. Brother and sister agreed to create a permanent charter separating ceremonial access, protected legacy pieces, and future family designations. Charles would defend his wife's dignity without abandoning Queen Elizabeth's explicit wishes. Their agreement remained private for only hours. By evening, news of Anne's intervention had reached the press. Charles and his sister had found common ground, but beyond Balmoral, the question had already become brutal. Had the Princess Royal protected the crown, or publicly diminished its queen? By sunrise, the private dispute had become a national spectacle. One newspaper placed Anne and Camilla on opposite sides of its front page, separated by the image of a locked diamond case. The headline read, "The Princess Who Said No." Broadcasters debated authority, inheritance, loyalty, and grief. Yet the image that defined public feeling was simpler: a crowd outside Windsor holding photographs of Queen Elizabeth, waiting to learn whether her final wishes had survived her. News outlets revealed that Anne had stopped Charles from approving unrestricted access to the late Queen's official jewelry collection. Palace officials described the matter as a routine classification review, meaning a formal process used to decide how royal objects may be handled. The explanation failed immediately. The public understood that this was not routine. It was a struggle over memory, power, and the limits of a queen's authority. Commentators split into two fierce camps. One side argued that Camilla required access to historic pieces because state service demanded visible continuity. The other believed Anne had protected Queen Elizabeth's personal instructions from being quietly erased. Neither argument remained calm for long. Outside Windsor Castle, several hundred people gathered along the barriers. An elderly woman held a photograph of the late monarch wearing the Commonwealth brooch. Beside her, a young girl carried a handwritten sign that read, "Her promises still matter." That single message spread faster than any palace statement. A major evening broadcaster framed the dispute as a test of whether royal succession transfers every symbol or preserves obligations to those who come next. The phrase deepened the pressure inside the family. Catherine watched the report with William and became uncomfortable when her name was tied to the protected brooch. She told him she had never wanted a jewel to become the cause of another woman's humiliation. The prince answered that the conflict was not truly between her and Camilla. It was about whether written intentions could be discarded whenever they complicated the present. Then the palace announced that Charles would issue a formal jewelry charter, a binding framework defining access to the royal collection. Speculation surged that Anne might receive permanent authority over every piece associated with Queen Elizabeth. Camilla surprised her household by refusing to oppose the charter publicly. She asked only that the final statement confirm her right to wear suitable crown jewels as queen, separating dignity from unrestricted possession. Anne read the draft and crossed out a sentence praising her intervention. She insisted that the resolution honor their mother, not portray her as the victor over Camilla. The completed charter was finally placed before Charles, his wife, and his sister. The king lifted his pen again, but this time, the document beneath it was no longer the order that had divided them. The first authorization had threatened to break a family. The second would reveal whether they had learned to separate royal status from personal ownership before the damage became permanent. Charles signed the Royal Jewelry Stewardship Charter in the same room where Anne had stopped his hand. The new document did not humiliate Camilla, strip the king of authority, or hand the collection to one branch of the family. Instead, it established a boundary the monarchy had avoided defining. The reigning queen would receive the jewels required for duty. The late queen's protected instructions would remain binding. and no private household would again erase that distinction. Charles handed the signed charter to Camilla before anyone else read it. The Royal Jewelry Stewardship Charter was a formal agreement defining who could use historic royal pieces, for what purpose, and under whose authority. It granted the Queen access to a ceremonial collection for state banquets, diplomatic receptions, parliamentary occasions, and national services. She would serve beside the king with dignity, but dignity would no longer mean unrestricted possession. Camilla studied every line, then asked Anne whether the Commonwealth brooch would remain reserved for Catherine. The Princess Royal answered yes. The Queen paused, absorbed the weight of that answer, and said quietly, "Then that is where it should remain." Her acceptance did not erase the humiliation of the locked vault, but it changed its meaning. She understood that recognition could not be secured by removing every boundary left by the woman who came before her. Anne also surrendered something. Protecting Queen Elizabeth could not mean freezing the monarchy inside grief. The princess accepted Camilla's ceremonial role, while ensuring that jewels marked for Catherine, Charlotte, future sovereigns, and historic occasions remained protected. Those pieces could be released only for the people and purposes named in the late monarch's records. Charles faced his own mistake. He had believed defending his wife required granting her access to everything associated with his mother. Now the king understood that loyalty and remembrance were not opposing duties. Anne received no personal ownership and no unchecked command. She joined Charles, Sir Malcolm, and the Royal Collection Council, the body overseeing historic royal possessions, as one guardian among several. Sir Malcolm later opened the approved ceremonial vault for Camilla's next engagement. The Commonwealth brooch remained inside a separate protected case beside Queen Elizabeth's handwritten card. The Queen looked toward it, then selected another piece without hesitation. Anne's intervention had not defeated Charles or rejected Camilla. It had defined stewardship. Royal treasures were not trophies for the present. They were promises carried forward. Anne stopped one signature, but in doing so, she preserved something far greater than diamonds. The principle that even a king inherits the crown's memory, he does not own it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.